I really need to get some intro music, guys, or something. Welcome back to What's Not Sports. I'm your host, Will O'Connor, here for another episode. It's been about a week since the last episode. What else can I say? I've been a bit slack on the content this week, nothing on the socials. I apologize for that. But I have been sick, so I think that's justifiable. So I didn't get my tips out last week, which I was very, very disappointed with. But I'll be better this week. I'm going to start. I know it's before. It doesn't matter so much for AFL because your team list coming out later in the week and my second pod would already be out. NRL, a bit different. Teams list drops Tuesday night. So I'm able to talk about that in the second, what would be in the second pod. But I've decided, going to go back to the basics, like I said, but I'll redo my tips, not redo them, but I'll share my tips again later on in the week, for example. But I'm going to share them now before the team lists do drop, do all of that, and then we'll, do a post later on the week, try and pump out some other content. So, yeah, let's roll into it, guys. So, pretty big week in news for AFL and things like that. So, we're going to start off with AFL this straight away. We had Hawks versus Collingwood, Geelong versus Essendon, Richmond versus St Kilda, Sydney versus Brisbane, Carlton versus the Gold Coast, Port Adelaide versus Fremantle, GWS versus North Melbourne, Melbourne versus Bulldogs, and West Coast versus Adelaide. In that, Hawks versus Collingwood, we had the Hawks at the win over Collingwood. Collingwood is now starting to fall short a little bit. I think they're a little bit rattled. I don't know what we're going to see throughout that. Geelong got the win over Essendon, so that just is making the Essendon losing streak increase even more, which I guess is a little bit disappointing for Essendon fans. But yet they're still not on the bottom of the ladder just yet. St Kilda got the win over Richmond. Now, this was an exciting game. Sydney versus Brisbane. It's, a clash, one might say, of the finalists last year. And Sydney got the win narrowly over Brisbane. It was a good game. I don't think many people are expecting that, especially now that Brisbane's starting to find a bit of form. But that's what happened. Carlton versus Gold Coast. Gold Coast got the win there. Carlton not really anywhere to be seen at the moment, in all honesty. There's a few more things we'll touch on that later on. Melbourne lost to the hands of the Bulldogs, so they're looking decent form. West Coast only narrowly lost to Adelaide. I think that was a bit of a wake-up call for Adelaide, as in, wow, we're the only team guaranteed top 8, and we nearly lost to only just beat the bottom team. So anyway, that's what we've got for this week. Next round, let's jump into it. Essendon versus St Kilda, Freo versus Brizzy, Gold Coast versus GWS, Carlton versus Port, Hawks versus Melbourne, Adelaide versus Collingwood, North Melbourne versus Richmond, Sydney versus Geelong, and to finish off the week, we got Bulldogs versus West Coast. Let's kick it off. St Kilda will extend that Essendon losing streak by another. Gold Coast will plough over the GWS. Carlton Port. I had Port, but you know what? I'm going to back Carlton this week. I think that could be the call. I'm not. We'll have a little look. But Carlton, they're overdue. I just don't know. Yeah, screw it. We're going to back Port. Nah, we're going to back Carlton here. We're backing Carlton. We then have Hawks versus Melbourne. We're going to back the Hawks because they're pretty good form right now. Very happy with them. Adelaide versus Collingwood. Adelaide's the only team locked into the top 8. Collingwood seems to be just losing a bit of their shine at the moment, and I think a lot of people are liking that, seeing that that team is struggling quite a bit. So I am going to back Adelaide here. North Melbourne will get the win over Richmond. Sydney versus Geelong will be another good clash. I'm going to pick Sydney here. They're going to go on and, well, they got the win over Brisbane, so I think they'll have a lot of confidence. So I will back them to beat Geelong and finish off Bulldogs versus West Coast. Obviously, we're going to go with the Bulldogs, with West Coast having not the greatest run this season. Now, let's talk a little bit in my little notes this week. So, as I said, Adelaide is the only team locked into the top 8 at the moment. So, they're the only ones that are locked into finals. So, there's still 3 more rounds of footy to happen in the AFL. A lot can change. Collingwood could miss out. I'm just telling the facts. We'll see what happens there. Simon Goodwin, the Melbourne coach, was sacked last week, so the D's obviously showing that they have a bit of struggle in the world right now. Not much else to comment on that one. We then have Nate Fyfe has announced his retirement from Fremantle from footy at the end of the season, so that's, for Freo fans, you'd be a bit sad. He's been around for a very, very long time, and hopefully he can do justice for himself and his team for the rest of the season. And as I said, I mentioned Carlton. Carlton a little bit in crisis. They had a 5-hour board meeting earlier in the week or last week, and they decided Michael Voss will continue as the head coach of the Blue Baggers I think for at least the season. Take what you want from that. Like, I just don't know what to take from that, a positive or negative. I mean, probably a good thing you're not getting rid of your coach in the last 3 weeks of a regular season. But who knows? Who knows? Rightio, that's all me for AFL. Let's jump into the NRLW. So, we have the Dragons versus Sharks, Knights versus West Tigers, Bulldogs versus Wars, Titans versus Roosters, Raiders versus Broncos, and the Eels versus Bulldogs. The majority of these games were kind of like a wipeout game, at least winning by 2 tries or more. The only game not to do that was the Eels versus Cowboys one. It was a pretty close game, that one, actually. So, very interesting there. So, let's just get the official scores so I can go through it with you guys. All right. So, Dragons versus Sharks. Sharks got the win there, 6-20. Dragons losing streak in the girls now goes to 3. Knights versus Tigers absolutely dominated the Tigers this week. The Knights showing what a team they truly are, 30-6. Bulldogs versus Warriors. The first time these two teams have clashed in the NRLW, and the Doggies got rolled by the Wars. So they got a bit of an ambush. It was 6-34. Titans versus Roosters. I thought this might have been a little bit of a better game. But no, the Roosters asserted their dominance there, 24-8. And then Raiders versus Broncos. The Raiders actually getting a decent scoring, but then they also got a decent score put on them, 28-44. The Raiders girls still winless. I don't like it. And as I just said, Eels versus Cowboys. Cowboys got the win there, but those girls only narrowly beat them by 4 points. Now, let's have a look into next week. We've got Sharks versus Titans, Broncos versus Eels, Wars versus Raiders, Tigers versus Dragons, Roosters versus Knights, and the Cowboys versus the Bulldogs. Okay, Sharks versus Titans. I'm backing the Titans here. They've lost a few games. Sharks have won some good, hard games. I'm just ready for Titans to do something and something more for that. Broncos versus Eels. You can't go past the Broncos, even though the Eels are playing good footy at the moment. I just don't see them beating those Bronco girls. They're just a different breed. Let's go Wars, Raiders. I'm not going to go against my team. I'm going to back the Raiders. It's going to be an upset. The Wise Girls have been incredible so far this season, but they will be the Raiders girls' first win. Tigers versus Dragons. The Dragons will want to cut their losing streak now. They're going to get the win over the Tigers, so I'll back the Dragons out. Roosters versus Knights. The Roosters are too far of a good side to lose to the Knights. Even though the Knights are a good side, I just don't see it happening this week. I reckon the Roosters will win there, and the Cowboys will get the win over the Bulldogs. Boom. Mic drop. That's my tips for the NRLW. Before I go into the men's tips, I just want to talk about the NRL and NRLW. It's Indigenous round. We just had Indigenous round. Well, it's 2 weeks. So we just had the first round last weekend, and then another round of it this weekend. I love the jersey designs that they've done. I think they look fantastic, and it's pretty cool. I really just want to acknowledge a lot of the welcome countries have been, I thought, really well spoken and really well done. That's just a little note I've noticed that I want to talk about and mention myself. I reckon they've done a real good job on it, and yeah, that's just my opinion on it. They've done it very well this Indigenous round so far, as it means a lot to a lot of the athletes and players. Now let's move on to the NRL boys. We had some good games this week. So let's tell them what we had. We had Storm, Broncos, Knights, Penrith, Raiders versus Manly, Dragons, Sharks, Dolphins, Roosters, Bulldogs versus Wires, Titans, Bunnies, and Eels, and Cowboys. This Storm Broncos game was aiming to be a big one, and then all disaster and hell broke out as the Broncos halves both went off with a hamstring injury in the exact same play. Xavier Coates intercept, gunning it down. Ezra Mam, Adam Reynolds, the whole Broncos team was chasing him down. Bang, Ezra Mam goes down, and so does Adam Reynolds with hamstring injuries. A lot of discussion. Hamstring injuries come under a lot of load and fatigue, so late in the season, yes, but the load is managed by professional sports exercise scientists, strength and conditioners, all these things. I just think it's a freak accident. I don't think anyone's, overtrained because they're monitoring and managing the load, and I just think it's an unlucky accident right there. Now, it was 20-2 or something, 22-2, so 20-point lead, I believe. Let's have a look at that. I just want to get my facts straight. 22-2 to the Storm. And then Selwyn Cobbo also went off with a hamstring injury later on in the game. So 3 freak accidents for the Broncos. Does not look good running into finals. They stoop back down to 6 on the ladder now. Tough luck, I guess. For Broncos fans, you'll still be in the finals. You'll still be a threat. And Adam Reynolds looks to be back round 27, maybe, potentially. It's hard to tell. Maybe first week of finals. Ezra Mam, Selwyn Cobbo look to be out 6 weeks if they manage to make finals and get that far. But it looks like they'll be out for the rest of the season. So devastating news for Broncos fans. Let's move on. Knights, Panthers. Panthers absolutely dominated the Knights in Newcastle by, 12-48, putting 36 points on them. I'm not worried yet, but I don't like it. I don't like Penrith and what they're doing. How can you come from the bottom of the ladder in round 12 to now in the top 4? I think it's ridiculous, and I hate it. I hate it. It doesn't sit right with me. Does not sit right with me. Anyway, let's move on. We then had Raiders versus Manly. Up the milk, as I like to say. It was good from the boys. Manly jumped out the gun fast, scoring in their first set. against the Raiders. The Raiders had a kick-off. Raiders, good first set, and then Manly just literally ran away with the ball. Tommy Turbo went over. And then it was, I think, 10 to 6 half time. Another early try in the second half from the Eagles. Sea Eagles, I should say, Manly, and started mocking us and our Viking clap. So, you know what Ethan Strangeone did? Ethan Strangeone did a hat trick. Yeah. Yeah, he did. My guy. I had a little punt on him. I had him for a double. I didn't have him for a hat trick, but man, Ethan Strange, you've heard it from me before, and you hear from me again and again and again. I keep hammering on about it. Needs more recognition. I understand NRL has such a big following base in Sydney, but it shouldn't always focus on the Sydney halves. Look how good Katoa is for the Dolphins, and look how good Ethan Strange is for the Raiders. Probably the best defensive half in the game at the moment. My opinion, it's probably a bit biased, but yes, anyway, Raiders got the win there. We're back. We did lose our losing streak, but now we're back on it. It was a loss we needed to have, and it won't be happening again. Dragons versus Sharks. The Dragons just love to upset teams. Like they did it to the Raiders last week. They've done it to the Sharks this week. Will they make finals? I don't think so, but it's good from them. Dolphins versus Roosters. Oh, man, this game was a headache. I was rooting for the Finns. I was saying Finns up, swim the Finns. It did not go well. The Roosters dominated. It was an entertaining game. The fact that there was a couple of melees, 4 sin bins at once. It really should have only been Spencer Leniu that got sent off. Well, 10 in the bin, maybe even send off. But like for 3 other players to get sent to the bin, I thought that was a disgrace and all that. But yeah, the Roosters just dominated the Dolphins, 12-64. Then we move on to the Bulldogs-Wars game. Man, it was raining. I was hoping the Wars would clutch up, get back in the top 4, and beat the Doggies. Unfortunately, they did not. The Dogs finally showed that they can play some decent footy in wet weather, which I didn't think was possible for them, but here we are, talking about it. We then had an exciting game, a nice early little spoon bowl. We had the Titans versus the Bulldogs at Seabass. The Titans versus the Bunnies at Seabass. And it was an interesting game. Oh, Jaden Campbell just needed to score, put the ball down. But no, Trell Mitt, he spoiled a try for him. It was actually a good clash, though. I quite enjoyed it. But not much to say other than that. And then we finished off the round with a real exciting game. Eels versus Cowboys. Eels winning by 1 point. A field goal. Mitch Moses going off his head at his other halves and other players. He took a big dive at the end, which ended up paying off for getting a try disallowed. It is what it is. Jeremy Nano probably ran the wrong line, but Moses having a big dive really milked that, getting the penalty and the try disallowed. So, yeah, the Eels got the win there. And the Tigers had the bye, so they got 2 points, which is pretty cool for them, because that doesn't happen a lot. Well, it has been recently, but yeah, that's that. Now, let's talk next round. We've got some really exciting games here. We've got Penrith versus Storm. We got the Wars versus Dragons, Roosters versus Bulldogs, Sharks versus Titans, Broncos Dolphins, Bunnies Eels, Tigers Manly, Cowboys Knights, and the Raiders unfortunately have a bye. So you won't be hearing anything from me. No, I'm joking. You'll be still hearing from me this week. Let's run through it. Penrith versus Storm. I've got Storm. I'd rather the Storm win than Penrith, but I don't want either to win. I don't want any of them. That'll be an exciting game. Real good for your Thursday night footy. So I'm excited to watch that, in all honesty. But we're back in the Storm here because Penrith aren't going to make top 4. Wars versus Dragons. I want to choose the what? Nah, I don't. I'm back in the Dragons here. They're upsetting top 8 teams. They've done it to the Raiders. They've now done it to the Sharks, and they're going to do it to the Wars this week in New Zealand, which is going to be hard for them to do, but they're going to do it. We've then got Roosters versus Bulldogs. Roosters are going to pull up an upset on the Doggies after absolutely brutally smashing the Dolphins. Sharks versus Titans. Screw it. Let's go for an upset. Titans to beat the Sharks just because they were so good against Penrith. And yes, I know they nearly beat the Bunnies, and the Bunnies are like basically their reserve side. But no. The Titans are going to beat the Sharks. That's my bold call this week. Sorry. Titans are going to beat the Sharks, not the Bunnies. Titans are going to beat the Sharks this week. That's my bold call of the round. Watch the space. It's going to happen at Shark Park. Get excited. We then have Broncos versus Dolphins, Clash of Brisbane, as they like to call it. Let me just have a drink of water. Hydration is key, guys. What was that? Broncos versus Dolphins. I'm back on the Dolphins. They're going to bounce back after their miserable loss against the Roosters. Yes, I know the Broncos have good players still, but now they're missing Cobbo, Mam, and Reynolds. That then makes a change in your halves. Ben Hunt probably goes into 7. We'll see. We'll see who slots into 6 for the Broncos, but I reckon the Dolphins will bounce back hard and get the win here. Bunnies versus Eels. I was going to say the Eels because the Eels did beat... The Eels did beat the Cowboys in a nail-biter, but each week the Bunnies grow stronger. They get a player back from injury, and I think they'll upset the Eels here. We then got Tigers versus Manly. I reckon Tigers are going to go get a win here. Get another lot of 2 points. Really give Manly a run for their money here. And Manly won't be expecting it, and that will be the problem. And then we got Cowboys and Knights to finish off this week, and it'll be the Cowboys will bounce back after the loss against Para, and that'll be the round. So, couple other notes. We talked about the Bronx losing 3 star players for him. We talked about how there's no Raiders this weekend. Very sad. But what we haven't talked about is AJ. Alex Johnson getting closer to breaking that record. 4 tries away now. It's pretty cool. He's edging closer and closer with every game. Shane Flanagan extends his contract for another 2 years with the Dragons. Now, while I'm thinking about it, Dragons versus Sharks, there was a penalty try allowed. How is that a penalty try when the try from the Titans the week before wasn't a penalty try against when Brian Toto knocked out a dude? Just ridiculous. Let's have some consistency. Either make them both penalty tries or don't. It's whatever. Trainers, while I remember this, trainers, do you guys, they're going, trainers getting bashed, blah, blah, blah. Trainers, you know the rules. You are technically professionals. That is your job. Not to get involved in play, all that. In the Cowboys-Eels game, Cowboys trying to pass to another Cowboys player, and the Cowboys trainer actually got in the way of his own team. Now, you guys probably get paid decent money to be on the field, do your trainer role, and all of that. I'm not saying you guys don't do a good job, but you get paid to do this. It's like when we say the NRL players, you get paid $1 million a year to catch a footy and you're dropping it cold. No. Trainers, you know the rules. You get paid. This is your job. You know you shouldn't be in the play with the ball. You know all the rules. Just sort your stuff out. That's all I wanted to say. We won't touch on it anymore, but the trainers should know better. What other notes do we have? In my opinion, the Sharks and Raiders had the easiest run home to the final, so I definitely see the Raiders getting the minor premiership. Sharks definitely will secure a spot in the top 8. I reckon the Wars, I know I've got them to lose this week, but I've also got Penrith to lose this week. I think the Wars will clutch up and they'll finish the season strong, get back in the top 4. Penrith will miss out on the top 4. They'll get knocked out in the first round of finals, and no more Penrith. Booyah. And that's it. That's all I've got for you guys this week. As always, reach out to me if you want to hear more content. What do you want to see on the socials? I think I've got a few things coming. A few things in the work. As I said, I'm continuing to try and grow the podcast a bit more every week, whether that is the studio or the content I'm providing. Hopefully I got a few things in the work coming up soon. But for now, this is what it is. Let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you for tuning in to another episode of What's Not Sports. I hope you enjoyed the 26 minutes of me blabbering on. As always, if that's What's Not Sports, thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you in the next episode.